better. You can control them better.
Depends on what you want to do.
Right, depends on what you do. But we're very connected to our biological existence. But my thought is that our biological existence comes with all the baggage of all the human reward systems that have been put in place in order to ensure our survival.
Yeah.
And this is what's led us to war. This is what's led us to
yeah.
what's led us to all the terrible things.
Yeah. We have a lot of baggage.
Yes. And that
Fuck
baggage,
yeah.
I think, is a byproduct of survival of the fittest mentality that came out of our biological life. As we integrate digitally, I think that might be one of the primary benefits, is that we realize,
Yeah, we
we can't
did.
kill each other, we're all one.
Yeah.
Like, we really are all one,
Yes.
and we really are all connected. And instead of doing that, why don't we figure out a way to solve all this and work together? And if we are all one of the same mindset,
Oh,
this whole idea
fuck.
of stealing
I'm sorry.
resources and covert operations, that's all going to go away.
Yeah.
It just makes sense
Right.
that would be one of the things that would happen. We would stop doing all the dumb things that we do.
Yeah.
And then as we
I know,
join
but
together, it's
I
like,
would
we
like
need
to
to come up
leave
with
you better.
solutions for our environmental issues. We need to come up with solutions for long-term strategies for dealing with all these different problems that we've created. And then we can do it together.
Yeah.
Instead of like having this whole concept of territorial lines in the sand where you're not allowed to cross unless you have a passport, or you have to have paperwork, and some sort of an integration with all human beings. And the way we have with cell phones, but way more sophisticated.
Yeah. I mean, something I find really shocking is how difficult it is for humans to think of other humans as human. Right? Like, so we have like our sphere of friends, or like people that we find socially acceptable, and then like pretty much anybody outside of that space is like beyond our cognitive horizon, and we just can't treat them as people anymore. And I find this very perplexing, and about a bit of an issue in making the kind of transition that you're talking about, that we just like can't even see each other as humans.
Sure, I mean that's the
Oh,
concept we're different than us. We're allowed to do this because
nice shot.
That permeates so much of modern society right now. It's like hard to look at anybody and see them as a person.
And I think that's baked into us, first of all, because we all evolved in tribal groups of very small numbers of people, which is where Dunbar's number comes from, right? We only have a certain amount of people that we can keep intimately connected to in our mind.
Yeah, and our social networks are much larger than that now, so most of the people in our network we can't actually humanize.
Well, it's even worse if you're famous, because you don't remember anybody's name.
Yeah.
I mean, so
and then you have all kinds of people that have a parasocial relationship with you, and like they think they know you, and they don't know you. Yeah.
Especially me, I do this.
Yeah.
So I'm talking all the time. It's like, I talk to you every day.
It must be very weird.
Fucking strange. But it's also, I feel like that sort of connection with people, this is what with anybody who's doing, I think it's sort of a podcast or something like that, is kind of doing is like a one-way version of what I think is going to exist universally on the planet.
Yes. I agree with that. I think actually the thing that I find really interesting about the podcasting space.
Oh, this curve, it's fine. It's not that big.
Like
We're
very
still on the fairway.
Conversation, but it's technologically mediated and shared, right? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. And so like this transition phase, and like why are podcasting becoming so popular, I think is because it's part of this kind of transition that we're all undergoing.
There's also an unusual authenticity in having access
to
individual minds without influence of producers and directors and a bunch of different people. So like this conversation in particular, like if you don't have a VPN on your device right now, I have some bad news for you. Your browsing history, your personal information, everything you buy and do and say online,
right around that shit.
But now, some good news.
Barely. Almost hit that top branch.
ExpressVPN. With ExpressVPN, your internet provider can't see your browsing history. Neither can any Wi-Fi admins or anyone else trying to sweep on your activity. That's because ExpressVPN reroutes 100% of your online traffic to encrypted servers, keeping third parties out of your business. It also hides your IP address from the apps and websites you visit. That means data brokers can't use it to identify you or track you. ExpressVPN is my favorite VPN because it's fast, it's easy to use, and it works on everything. Phones, laptops, tablets, even your TV. And another cool thing about it is that all of their servers run on RAM only, which means they can't log your activity even if they wanted to. Plus, ExpressVPN has servers in over 100 countries, so you can change your location to virtually anywhere in the world with a single click. Take back your privacy the easy way with ExpressVPN. You can even get 3 extra months free if you go to expressvpn.com/Rogan. That's expressvpn.com/Rogan to get 3 extra months free. Tap the banner to learn more. I had 0 conversations with any person before I got you on.
Yeah.
I had a text message that I sent to my friend who's the booking guy. I said, hey, reach out to her. This sounds cool. See if she can do this date. And that's it. And then it goes on my phone, and that's it. And then so I start watching some of the conversations you had. I watched your thing on Lex. I start looking into these concepts and assembly theory and all these different things. And so my brain, it's all it is something I'm interested in.
Yeah.
There's no other reason to have this conversation other than I'm interested in it.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, resonates with other people because I love when someone's interested in something. If they're interested in making baseballs by hand or
I
whatever
think we should all be more excited about things. Like, things are exciting, especially creative spaces and, like, new ideas and people that are thinking about, like, changing things.
But for me, it's someone who's passionate about something.
Yeah, for sure. I totally get what you mean about the baseballs,
Anything.
I mean, this is why I like the watch discussion. It's very clearly, like, drawn from enthusiasm. And somebody, like,
by the way,
I don't know where I want to put
when
this.
it comes to watches, there are watch nerds, like serious watch nerds that can tell you, like, all the models and what this movement has that movement in it and this or that. Like, they know all the pieces. Some of them take them apart and put them back together again on their own. They have giant goggles and shit, little tweezers and shit. It's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, but I love when people are really excited about things, whether it's about playing the guitar or making a painting.
I'm sorry.
Something about that, to me, is infectious.
Yeah.
And it makes me excited about other things. If I see someone who's really excited about making furniture, I start getting excited about what I do.
Yeah.
It's like there's something
Yeah.
Swear to God.
Passion is infectious.
Yes.
No, I fucking left to right that bitch. I barely kept it on the front face.
And when you do what we're doing on this podcast and have conversations about things that are just interesting.
Yeah.
That's all it is. It's just interesting, right?
Interesting is good. It's far better than the opposite.
Yes, it's just fascinating. And so that stimulates minds. It stimulates people. It's like there's people at home that are listening like, I want to have a question. How did this happen? How did that happen? What would have happened if it was a little bit colder? What would have happened if it was a little bit warmer? What would have happened if there was no this or no that? Imagine a world where no one picks up the wheel. I mean,
I think about alternate histories all the time.
Well, the bizarre thing is they do not think the Egyptians did that. And so no theory there. It's like the massive mystery of human civilization itself, just in the structures that were left behind with no explanation. That alone makes us go, well, we have this bizarre idea in our head of how things progress based on our current understanding of the world we live in right now. But that has no bearing on Egypt. Like, what did they do? How'd they do that? We don't know.
I know. History is a predictive science, which is, like, a weird thing, but, like, people don't, like, think about this. But, like, you have to have theories of the past and then test it against the record, right? So it's not really any different than any other domain of knowledge where we're trying to make predictions and test them against current data. It's just, like, history, for some reason, we think it actually happened. Therefore, like, there's one narrative, but it's usually constructed based on what we know, and we're learning all the time.
Well, also the problem
and we forget all the time.
The collapse of that civilization, the burning of the Library of Alexandria, so all the records lost. So they probably had written down how they did everything, and some assholes came along and burnt everything, and now we're like, what did you do?
They were definitely assholes. I know. When I first heard about why we were in Alexandria, I was like heartbroken.
Oh,
Can you imagine what was lost?
If we knew what the amount of advancements, just Egypt, just that one part of Africa where they figured out how to do some things to this day, 4,500 plus years later, we are perplexed. Perplexed. Like, there's shitty theories. They all suck. Every theory sucks. They've just recently discovered some sort of hydraulic technology that was in one of the pyramids.
Oh, really?
Yeah, see if you can find that. These are some recent research that was published where it wasn't the Khufu pyramid, it was another pyramid. And in one of these other pyramids, they believe they have evidence of some sort of hydraulic technology that was used. Study published Monday in the journal PLOS. One researcher proposed that ancient people may have relied on water to build the step pyramid The suspect hydraulic system may have helped lift stones from the center of the pyramid. Wow. So, like, we're still trying to figure out what they did.
So long before I got into science, like, one of the first places I actually encountered astronomy was, like, reading about the Orion mystery when I was, like, in 5th grade, and I got obsessed with it for a little while about, like, whether the chambers in the pyramids were actually aligned with the stars and stuff, and, like how did they possibly do that? It was kind of crazy.
There's a guy named Christopher Dunn, who's an engineer, and he has the wildest theory. He thinks that the construction of the pyramid, and this is, by the way, both maligned by some archaeologists, completely dismissed, but also embraced by younger archaeologists who aren't. So this theory is that the way the Great Pyramid
I don't understand why that was so far off.
But was set up as some sort of a way to generate electricity, and that there was a chamber, a subterranean chamber, and that this chamber had something in it that was like pounding on the stone and creating a certain vibration. And then they had these shafts that they had access to that had, they know these shafts existed, and they know the structure of these shafts, and these shafts that existed in the marble, or whatever stone, granite rather, and they would fill these shafts up with some sort of chemicals, and then at the end of the shaft was limestone, and so the limestone is porous, and the limestone allows the gases to escape from all these chemicals and contain itself inside this chamber. This chamber is constantly being vibrated, and then there are these pathways that lead up to what they're calling the King's Chamber, which is this insane structure.
No fucking way.
Things about the pyramid. These immense stones that are positioned. And then in those, they have shafts that go straight out into space that he thinks is gathering gamma rays. And so the gamma rays are interacting with this hydrogen that's being created by these chemicals and the vibrations, and that all these things are used to generate electricity. And this is why there's a gold capstone on the top of the pyramid and smooth limestone on the outside. It's a nutty theory. But this guy's he's a brilliant man.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's incredibly creative, and if it's testable, and, like, there's ways to validate that work,
Well, the problem is you have to do it at scale. And, like,
well, you could look for traces of, like, whatever chemistry is talking about on the pyramid walls, and, like, it would be possible to experimentally verify whether gamma rays could do that. I don't expect that they could, but like, there's pieces of it. Like, this is how science works. You have, like, a story of a set of hypotheses, and you can test individual parts of it, and then you try to validate it. So it'd be kind of cool, you know, like, you wanted to try to do that.
Right. And so then the question is, how'd they figure that out?
I don't know.
Imagine it turns out to be correct, and this was some sort of a way of generating power from the Earth and space itself. How'd you
but also why? Because where would they put the power? They didn't have any electric grids or anywhere to, like,
not that we know of, right? The problem is, it all gets to this weirdness of, like, how much evidence would be left from 10,000 years ago?
Shit got a little closer, but I tried to get us a nice eagle.
Was it 2,000 or 3,000 years? Like, how much tinkering? What was it?
I mean, there's all kinds of interesting questions you can ask about that kind of stuff, even in, like, deep time. So, you know, one of my colleagues, Adam Frank, had this paper on, like, the Silurian hypothesis, which is, like, the idea that there was, like, intelligent beings around the time of dinosaurs, like a dinosaur race, and, like, how would you actually look in the geological record for it?
Right.
And so, like, people can work out the mathematics of, like, you know, what would be the traces of these, you know, like, if the Egyptians had this capability, or if, you know, there were intelligent species that emerged on the planet long before humans and had enough technology, say, to, like, have radioactive waste or anything. Like, you can actually, like, bound, you know, like, what would we actually see in the record. So it is possible still to constrain this stuff. Even the most radical hypotheses. So, like, I've been raised in a tradition scientifically of, like, entertaining any idea, as long as it's something that we can actually test and measure.
Right.
And so I guess for me, I think you know, some of the most creative ideas in science are things that people completely didn't expect.
Like what?
Well, I mean, I think Einstein's a great example. You know, like, he was one of the few people that took seriously that the speed of light, you know, is constant. Like, we take that for granted now, but everybody thought that was kind of ridiculous in the experiment.
Nice shot.
Because there's no way that the speed of light could be constant. And And he was like, no, the laws of nature are invariant, and this invariance also implies that the speed of light could be invariant because it's the law of nature. And then he was able to derive relativity from that, and that has all kinds of radical consequences about the way that we think about space and time, and the fact that time is it's actually a relative concept. At least simultaneity is a relative concept. I think there's many concepts of time in physics. But yeah, so I think that's one. But like quantum mechanics is another. Like if you actually look at the observational evidence and you try to build a theory from the observational evidence, you get to like really interesting spaces that are completely different than what we thought. And so it's easy to have theories and creative
Right
ideas.
at the end.
It's actually harder to go from the observational constraints and work into a theory that's consistent with all of those. And that's actually where most of our more radical conception
hit R1,
foundational
bro.
shifts come from. And so that's why I'm actually particularly excited about what we're doing with assembly theory as an example, because like what we're trying to do there is say, if light is actually a real property of the physical world, like whatever we call light, it'll have to be redefined, then we should be able to have a measurable consequence. And the way we talk about that is actually to measure this complexity of molecules, assembly of molecules, which you can go in the lab and measure with standard instrumentation like a mass spec and an NMR and infrared. Like you can measure this property of a molecule, it's a real physical feature, and then you can derive all kinds of good shit from that. And I think this has been the tradition of physics in general, but science also more broadly, that the reason that we get so convinced about things when they work is because we're working backwards from what we observe and measure. And then we test it against what we can observe and measure. And the things that happen with reality are far stranger than the things that we dream up, which is why I love it. It's just crazy, like the kind of ideas you get out of that process.
Well, it's just the process that allows you and I to be staring at each other. First of all, the fact that we can see each other is crazy.
Yes.
Right? That's
Evolution of eyes is amazing.
Nuts.
Totally nuts.
And then also octopi have them too. They just evolved on a completely different branch of the evolutionary tree. Like,
totally crazy.
But they all evolved eyes. Like it seems like a property that almost every animal has.
Seeing is pretty deep. I mean, I don't know when the first photon receptors evolved in cells, but even cells have light sensing. But it's crazy. So like the idea that
he smelled something bouncy.
It evolved later, and
hey, we
it is
win
something
this.
that is fairly consistent. And even
We
if you
got
think
it.
about our technology, so I always think about the progression of biology and technology. It is fascinating also that a lot of our technologies that allow us to understand the world are technologies of sight, like telescopes and microscopes. And like we think we knew life on this planet, and then we invented the microscope, and it's like just you don't need that much more resolution. You can suddenly see that this table is completely covered in cells, for example, that we didn't know were there.
Right.
Which is just mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. It's like we evolved from cells billions of years ago. It took us billions of years to build to evolve into an intelligence that could build the technology and then look and be like, oh, biology's made out of cells.
And then if you think you understand
I left you too close.
Understand subatomic particles are like, hold my beer.
Yeah.
Because this whole thing's empty space.
Yeah.
And it's all operating in some bizarre quantum state where it's like both still and moving at the same time.
Yeah.
Like,
Those wave functions. Yeah.
what? Like,
This fucking man.
Everything. Oh, everything's.
You right. Another one?
I feel like we're just emerging from it.
Fuck yeah.
The ability to see things was this emerging technology, this emerging ability that probably changed everything, right? The ability to actually like recognize distances and to see objects and recognize them, and that is this emerging phenomenon that we sort of take for granted because we have. But there could be other things like that that have not emerged yet.
Yes.
That in this
so much
psychic phenomenon is one of the things that I connect with that. I don't believe in psychics, like a person could read your tarot cards, but I do think there's some weirdness involved in human beings that you can't put on a scale.
I think some people are really good at reading patterns in their environment.
I think there's that too. But there's also like phone rings and it was a person you were talking about you haven't talked to in forever. And all of a sudden they feel you and they call you. There's something trippy to that. That maybe not every time, not maybe repeatable, but occasionally you catch it. Occasionally there's this connection that seems to emerge. And I always wonder if that's an emergent form of a new ability that human beings will eventually possess.
Yeah, I have lots of thoughts, but I think the first one is I think we forget often that we are all connected by a common history. And so a lot of the features about like why is it that we can be sitting here having this
Nice
conversation?
shot.
Obviously we both have to speak the same language, but we also have to emerge from the same evolutionary architecture and have the same kinds of sensory apparatus to be able to communicate with each other, imply shared history. And so, like I think about life as these kind of, like these structures that are emerging over time and generating novel, things. But like the whole temporal relation, this idea of like objects being in time means that they're connected.
Damn it.
So,
I forgot to say something.
Living object actually has a time implied. It means that like every living object on this planet is not really a distinct object. They're all part of that same structure in time. And I think this is really
I was reading something on my computer.
That you're talking about because there's so much in our environment that is part of that shared history that we're picking up on all the time that like we don't even recognize that is like cues for like us to really
Damn.
And we miss it because we don't even recognize the history in our environment. And so we think things are just happening, spontaneously and like there's some magic behind it where really all it is contingency and causation. But I think the other thing that is interesting about what you're saying, which we already touched on a little bit, is these kind of stories that like there's ancient myths. Like I'm a huge just Campbell fan and like thinking about like the history of mythology. But like we have these myths for like most of human history, and there's been a lot of recurring motifs in them about telepathy, psychics, miracles. All of these stories, and it's super interesting to see how some of them are
had to put the pressure on if they want to win it.
Like the things that we imagine, like we're making real, and that's the part that's interesting to me, and that's much more physical.
Yeah. The things we're imagining we're making real.
Yeah. So it's not impossible that people that are psychic, at quote unquote, could exist. But I think what will happen is the stories that we're telling become embodied in the observations that we're making and the things that we're actually like implementing in the world. But like I don't know that historically I would say like I don't believe in magic. I think magic is or I do believe in mystery. But I think so when I say I don't believe in magic, it's not that I don't believe that people have personal knowledge or things, but I think what's more important is like when those things become shareable, they actually become things that we can use collectively, and I'm much more interested in that kind of thing.
Oh, you poor sap.
So it's not that I don't value mysticism or the kind of personal narratives that people have about experiences. I think those are incredibly valuable, and I think that we need those stories in our culture. It's just for me, I'm much more interested in like when do we make those kinds of things regularized in the way that like
oh motherfucker.
fundamental properties and believe them and like can share that information. That's what I like about science because it's like shareable thoughts that are universally usable.
Yes.
All right, partner.
Yeah, universally usable is great.
I'm sorry.
I've often entertained the idea of, I'm sure you're aware of the concept of the muse.
I like it.
Well, one of the best representations of this is a gentleman.
He's as cold as ice.
Author wrote Legend of Baggerville and a bunch of other great movies. He wrote this book called The War of Art. The book is essentially like a guidebook for creative types to avoid procrastination and resistance and to develop a structure that allows you to sit down in your desk at a very specific time every day.
I don't know, I can't see. Well, I think so, yeah. It's the one where it's got the river cutting through. Yeah, just go through wood. Uh-oh. Oh, you fucking
I think everyone has. I love creativity for that reason because it's so mysterious, even to the person having the creative act.
Too careful.
Which is just crazy.
Yeah, I almost always think of my best ideas as not even really mine, but like a gift.
Yes.
And so
I do too.
This is the concept of the muse. The muse, you summon the muse, you treat the muse with respect, you literally communicate with the muse, you put this intention out there, and if you do this every day, she will reward you. And she'll consistently bring you ideas. And if you are a person who can develop that kind of discipline to sit there and do that, you'll become productive through the muse.
Oh,
bullshit.
Yeah, certainly. But if you treat it like it's a real thing and behave with it.
No. I mean, I think the unconscious is a real thing. The reason I'm bringing it up is like so many people are really interested in consciousness, and then like really focus on that. But part of the reason that like where creativity comes from, and like part of this idea of using intuition to guide how you think about the world, I think is like there's so much happening in your brain that you're just not even consciously aware of. And I think a lot of the information processing architecture and like where my, like I've kind of resigned myself to like almost all of my thinking is in my unconscious brain, and I should just like leave it there. And if I get an idea emerging out of it, seems like it came from nowhere. But I'm just not consciously aware of all the processing in my brain.
I also wonder if the term consciousness is connected far too much to language.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
We think of things that we can describe with language and processes that we examine with language.
Oh, you
words that we attribute to specific objects and specific tasks and things that we do. And then there's this other thing that's going on. Maybe you feel bad that day. Maybe you feel lonely. Maybe you feel this. Like these sort of subconscious things are very conscious. They're conscious, but they're not attached to language.
Right.
And so when we're interacting with people on a conscious level, we're communicating constantly through words. So we have sounds that we make, and these represent things, and we all understand them, and so we use this as a way to express this thing that's going on with this thought process, the consciousness.
Yeah.
That we're attaching it to language.
Yeah. No, I think most of us do, because I think a lot of us
what?
But it's super interesting when you have people that don't do that. Like
oh no, I'll take it.
Like he doesn't have any visuals in his brain or like language in his brain, and it's super interesting talking to him because he's like completely and utterly brilliant. But I think like his mental architecture is really different. And I love working on deep foundational questions, because I think when you talk about these deep ideas and and maybe this is also why people like psychedelics, because if you're not like trained at the sort of
son of a quam,
debate, like where do you have these kind of experiences? But the kind of I'm talking.
I don't know why it did that. I'm
you
sorry.
You have really thought about how reality works, and like you have an architecture in your mind about what you think is fundamental about the nature of reality. You're asking this deeper scientific question. And I think some of my best discussions with some of my colleagues have been, those kind of discussions, and you really realize how people's brains are so different.
Very, very different.
So different.
But what is the estimation? There's some percentage of us that do not have an inner voice.
Yeah, I think it's like 4%, but I don't know.
I think it's higher than that.
Is
I think it's quite a bit higher.
I thought it was like
I think it's in the 20s.
Oh.
What's that?
I just made up a number.
It's up to 60%, but I've tried to look into this many times. I don't understand it.
Well, I think it's hard to report though, because people don't even know they don't have an inner voice, or people don't know they do have an inner voice, because you don't know what it's like to be in someone else's mind. So everybody just thinks their mind is normal.
Right. So if you talk to a schizophrenic, you're like, what's going on there?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Like, what's that misfiring?
Well, that's one of the things I'm really excited about, like these neural enhancement technologies, because I think we really underestimate the diversity
Double club
of
up.
minds. Like, it might be the most diverse things on this planet, or actually just like what's going on in our heads.
Most certainly. I mean, I know so many different unique people. I'm so lucky that I've met so many unique people.
Yeah, nice shot.
Yeah.
And then just
slow down.
Walks of life. I know so many people who think so differently.
Yeah.
I know great athletes and great scientists and great comedians and great musicians, and they're all different.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Different. Like some people will look at a problem and go, "Why is that? What about this thing? Why doesn't that?" And then I'm like, "How the fuck did you even see that? Like, why did you?"
Come on. I should have put those last adjustments.
It's based on your life
I had it right the first time.
genetics, but there's also, I think everyone's interface is different. I don't know even what you see. I assume.
I know. This blows my mind. I think about this all the time. I'm like, I have no idea what it looks like to anybody else who's going out in the world.
Well, it makes sense to me that it has to be different.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't different, why would you like things I don't like? Everybody would like the same thing.
Yeah.
Like the way the things look.
True.
Or food taste.
Yeah.
Like I have 2 children that have totally different ability to absorb hot, spicy food.
Oh yeah. My kids are like that too.
So my youngest is like me. My youngest, I mean, she might have a better version of it than me. Like that kid can eat anything.
Yeah.
She ghost peppers, like she likes it hot. And she loves like really.
Those are really hot.
But she's talking when she was a little kid, like Reapers. Like I get this. There's this hot sauce called Senor Lechuga. Really good stuff. It's organic and like really strong. Hot. Like if you like it really spicy. And I told her, like, listen, she dips her finger in it, sucks on it. She's like, it's not that spicy. I'm like, it's pretty damn spicy. Like, you freak. What the hell's wrong with you?
Wow.
I mean, it's kind of incredible. And
Yeah.
then the other one, like, a little bit of a jalapeno. She's hiccuping and coughing. Like, she can't take it at all.
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
Yeah.
So they both came from the same parents.
Right.
And, but so obviously things taste different to them.
Yeah, totally different.
So whatever that is,
Yeah.
where like some people love the taste of hot dogs, some people think they're disgusting, and you know, and they like whatever broccoli, whatever it is. Like, why? What is it? What are you experiencing when you're eating this? I don't know. What are you experiencing when you're seeing it? I'm just guessing that you're seeing what I see.
Yeah.
It's a total guess.
Yeah.
Holy
and it's really bad guess, pointing out, right?
Probably.
Is that your driver?
It has to have some. There has to be a bunch of other.
That was 30 yards over. What the fuck?
Allowing this person to process this in a pleasing or an unpleasing manner.
Yeah.
Like, what is going on? Like, and then the actual structure of the eye, right? We know some people's eyes aren't that good. Like, why is that?
Yeah.
Like, what's going on in there? Like, it stops working so good, so you just see things blurry and like.
Oh my gosh, I should put more backspin. I put backspin on it. What the fuck?
The world could all be colorblind.
Yeah.
Be lost. The idea that we're in this spectrum of how light interacts with objects. Incredible variety of different shades.
Yeah, and like people that have a major shift in that, like I read this Oliver Sacks story once about this person got hit in the head, and then they could only see the world in black and white, and like how existential that experience was transitioning, because like that's really depressing. Like you see a world of color, and then everything's black and white. It's like you're living in a movie or something. But like the story was about how they were an artist, and like they came to understand the world quite differently, and you can see a lot more shadow and light, and like you start paying attention to different details. But I mean, it's just mind blowing that can happen. It's like the same brain.
Yeah.
Wow.
Brain.
And then you have to completely readjust your experience of reality because now you see the world differently.
I have a friend who got a concussion and lost his sense of smell.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for years.
That's probably pretty traumatic.
Well, a lot of people got it during COVID as well.
Yeah, that's right.
But he got a throat concussion.
Yeah.
Way back.
Hi, Bubba. Anyway, pillow buddy.
I like to, when I started thinking about how people think differently, I was like, I think I was listening to a podcast running one day, and it's like, like imagine an apple, and now taste the apple, and I was like, I can imagine an apple, I can see an apple in my brain, and I can bite into the apple, but I cannot taste it. I cannot imagine tasting things. And this was really perplexing to me because, like, I never thought about the fact that, like, inside my head, I don't have taste. I only have taste when I'm eating food. I can definitely taste things, but it's like, like it's a weird thing about my brain. But like I don't know how common that is. But I think like everybody has things like that. And if like we just do experiments with our minds, it's kind of interesting to probe the boundary of like things you take for granted that you think you can do or you can visualize and you just can't. It's just not in your head.
Well, the sense of smell we take for granted.
Yeah,
because everybody has it.
Yeah.
And obviously there's an evolutionary advantage in terms of food being rotten, there's a bunch of different factors, gases that are poisonous. But it's invisible. Yeah. And
do you know if your friend could still imagine smell, or did they lose the ability to even like recall?
I haven't talked to him in years, but I have to reach out. I don't even know if he had got a smell back.
Yeah, I just.
He's a guy who used to fight in the UFC.
Oh, I see.
And he got knocked out once and lost his sense of smell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Crazy. Not
really
good.
Crazy. Yeah, no, that's not good.
Not good.
Yeah.
But the idea is that sense of smell we all just take for granted. We have it. We all, oh my God, you smell that apple pie. Oh, it's coming.
Yeah.
Ooh, this is so exciting. You smell it. You walk in the house, someone's cooking bacon.
Yeah.
That we take that for granted. But that is an invisible thing. And who knows how many other things there are like that we don't have. Like we don't
of course,
have
my mouth
the
is left.
ability to detect neutrinos. Imagine
and you're not even
all the neutrinos passing through us at any given moment, right?
I visualize it as you're saying that. I'm like, there's thousands of them.
I mean, they're literally going through
what?
the earth. They're flying through the earth right now.
Right.
But we don't have the ability to detect that. But why not? Right? I mean, that's a thing that's real that we
what
don't
the fuck
have
was that?
tools for.
Why did it roll? See, this shit don't make no fucking sense to me sometimes. Like
other things that we know are real.
Right. Well, our sense of sensory perception only like that evolved biologically only took us so far. But like obviously like we're sitting here talking about neutrinos.
You
Right. Validate that they're there, and we have theories that would be consistent with what you're just saying.
Yeah.
So the ways that we see the world, I guess my point is are not just the biological ones, but they're becoming enhanced by technology in all sorts of ways, and theories and explanations are part of that technological infrastructure, which is why we can talk about that. Our gravitational waves, for example, another one.
Yes.
Going through us right now too.
Right. We can't detect them.
Yeah.
We can feel the effects of gravity itself.
Yeah.
You know, but we also know that that's entirely based on mass, right? So we also know that gravity, like the more weight you have on you, the harder it is for you to get around because you're being pulled.
That's right.
Which is bizarre.
Yeah.
And you can use that to your advantage by rocking. You know, you can get in better shape by putting a heavy backpack on and going up a hill. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
So you change your physical structure by adding weight.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what weightlifting is too, right? You're changing your physical structure and your ability to move through space and time by resisting constantly. So developing these biological tools to get past gravity.
Well, I think it's amazing how much of like the physical world you can get.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like we really do live.
Since
in a
when?
reality. Like I know some people think we live in a simulation, but like there's a real physical world. And I think we only kind of conceive of it as a simulation because like so much.
Why would you give me an 8 iron with a pitch?
It seems not real, but it is real.
So you don't subscribe to the possibility of simulation theory?
No, I find it inadequate for a number of reasons. It doesn't seem like it's a better explanation than any other current explanation for how the universe works. So, you know, I put the simulation, argument, intelligent design, even sort of the current laws of physics, and kind of ability to explain why the universe exists the way it does. Because what all theories do is they basically push explanation to the boundary.
What the fuck?
And in physics, we do that by saying there
was
was
that roll?
State of the universe that was low entropy, and the laws of physics have described what it's done ever since, but you can't explain where the universe came from. And in this, you know, in intelligent design, it's like you can't, the universe is, you know, designed by some being, but like where did that thing come from?
Right.
And in the simulation argument, it's just the great programmer in the sky made us, and I think, you know, the nuance there is like if any entities like us could evolve that could build simulations, then it's far more likely that we live in a simulation. But I think you still have to assume a physical reality that evolves the capability of building simulations. So it seems very
fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Whatever. Mine just happens to roll off, but his fucking sits.
Like Elon said, the chances of it not being a simulation are in the billions.
Yeah.
Like 1 in billions that we are not in a simulation.
God damn it, Skeeter. Leave your claws in your fucking paws, bro.
And not have them be founded in anything.
Right. There has to have been a thing before the simulation existed in order for that thing to create the simulation. For the simulation to occur.
It's super interesting also to me that a lot of the people that are proponents of the simulation argument tend to be in like the tech world, and so like I think it's in their favor to think that like, you know, like it's great to think that computers are like gods and like, you know, like, and to build this kind of mysticism around these technologies, but like if you really want an explanation for what simulations are, there has to be a continuity between the physical world and the simulation. And like you have to be able to explain how it is that computation emerged on a planet, and simulations became possible on our planet, and like they emerged out of something.
Right.
So I think I'm much more interested in like what is the unification of the virtual and the physical, and like how can we think about them as similar kinds of systems than to just say the universe is a simulation, therefore it solves how light universe is.
Right.
It doesn't get you anywhere.
It doesn't. And also, well, I always think about the universe itself. We always want to look at a birth of a universe and the end of the universe. And I always say, I wonder if we do that because of our own biological limitations. If we think that a thing had to emerge because we emerged. But why does it have to have emerged? If it exists,
right?
Why didn't it always exist? And but then that's a huge problem. Like,
you can't have everything.
That was ridiculous. Another one?
Could possibly exist to make everything exist, which is the other
one more.
The prime mover.
Well, not only that, but the craziest theory of all is the primary theory of the creation of the universe itself. Which is the absolute nuttiest theory that's ever existed. Everything that exists came out of something so small, was smaller than the head of a pin, and then in one massive moment, it creates the universe itself.
Yeah.
And that's one that universally is agreed upon.
Yeah, I know. I agree.
And it seems to be a signature of it. So you can study it.
Yeah, there's no problem with crazy ideas. By the way, I love crazy ideas.
They're the craziest.
Yeah.
But that's the craziest, right?
Yeah. But even going back to the simulation, but yeah, the big thing is I mean, but I think, when you're trying to understand how reality works, it should surprise you.
Yes.
And it should have counterintuitive properties. I mean, I think that's how we really know we're learning things. So, and I'm also of the perspective that I think any theory can be replaced by a better one. Any explanation is not an ultimate explanation. So
Right.
we're constantly learning more and we're constantly refining our ideas. So,
is that a problem in science in that when people espouse a very particular idea of how the world works, they have a hard time backing off of that? And
I think collectively, yes. I think scientists have a hard time doing that. And so, I confront this a lot in my work because the kind of ideas we're proposing are new and they say very different things than, sort of the standard canon would say. Or like we make, like we're seeing structure that isn't part of the way that people talk scientifically about the nature of life or like its fundamental properties. And what I see is a lot of resistance to new ideas because people think things are already explained. And so this is really funny for me, the original life. It's like we already have an evolutionary theory. Like the original life is solved, and it's like, have you been to a meeting on the original life? It's like, that problem is not solved. I'm sorry, but so many people think it is. They just think like it's easy. It's been done. You'll get like really prominent, physicists too, being like, oh, you get the first replicator on a planet, and then you get life. And the real hard problems are like, the long-term future of the universe and things. And I think we're reasoning based on assuming absolute knowledge sometimes when we don't have absolute knowledge.
Do you think that some of that sort of trying to define things in a definite way, that we do know it, we understand it, is in response to some religious ideas about the creation of life, and that they propose that these scientific riddles have been solved because if you leave them open, that kind of opens the door to the possibility of a creator or of intelligent design, and they want to kind of rush to say, no, we figured it out.
That's what I've been told by, like, I mean, because we have a lot of, there have been a lot of reactions to the work that we've been doing, both positive and, like, interacting with people's dogmas in certain ways. So they're, like, very reactionary, and then some people that are much more thoughtful and critical, and then some people that are very not thoughtful but very critical. And so you get, like, a whole spectrum, and I guess if you do any kind of high-profile science, you're going to get everything thrown at you. And part of the reason that I want the ideas out there is because I want that critical feedback, so that's fine. If it's, intelligent feedback, that's amazing. But I think the thing that I've noticed is that the way that different communities interact with the ideas are totally different. So it's like, the evolutionary biologists, where some of them, not all of them, you can't make like about any group, really don't understand what we're trying to do. And then, but the creationists don't either, and they don't want it either. So it's like you're in this weird space, and they're dueling with each other because they think they have totally different explanations for things. So, but yeah, I have been told that field is particularly protective of its ideas because it's had to battle with intelligent design for so many decades and really stand its ground. And original life is like a really separate community from biology writ large. I mean, I was even told early in my career when I was a postdoc by a very prominent biologist that I shouldn't work on origins of life. And I want to understand what life is. I should just pick a standard biology problem. And I thought to myself, like, the one problem you want to pick is the one everyone can't answer because that's where you have the most progress right now. Yeah. So it's just very funny to me that it's often swept under the rug as solved or too hard to solve, both simultaneously at the same time.
It sounds insane to me that someone would tell you not to look into the origin of life.
Yeah.
Because the idea that we have figured everything out about, even if we understand the processes involved, right? How often does this take place in the universe? Like, what is this? What is it? Are there other ways to do it?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
I mean, we don't have an idea what an alien is, right? Like, just that should slap you in the face.
Yeah.
Like, the multitude of ways we talk about alien, we don't know what we mean when we say that.
He's slowly progressing. I like it.
My thought, I had this bizarre thought once, that ideas are life forms.
Oh, sure. I totally agree with that.
Really?
Yeah.
So my thought is every physical object that human beings have ever created came out of an idea.
Yes.
So idea gets into primate brain. Primate brain goes, oh, I think
Yeah.
And then primate brain figures out a way to hollow out a tree and turn it into a canoe. And then primate brain says, you know what? When I let go of this stick, if I pull it back, it goes forward, right? If I let go of it and it springs, what if I could tie a string? What if I could pull it further? What if I get a stick? I think I can get that stick to fly, and then it becomes a bow and arrow.
Yeah.
And so the human mind interacts with these ideas. The ideas manifest themselves in physical objects.
Yeah.
And every physical object, including airplanes, spaceships, space stations, satellites, all of them come from ideas.
I know.
And then these ideas, much like human beings interact with other human beings, these ideas interact with other ideas, and they create more and more complex versions of the idea. Quantum computing.
Yeah.
It's not like one person's idea.
No, these are things that happen over centuries.
Yeah.
No, I totally agree with this. I actually make similar arguments in my book about rockets as a good example of this, right? Like they were imagined long before they became actual physical
Another Chinese
objects.
invention, by the way.
Yeah, the Chinese were onto lots of stuff.
Everything. Paper, alcohol, everything. Mechanical clock, everything.
So I think, I think this gets to the idea of like living objects being deep in time because you like, and I also think a lot about the nature of like abstract things versus physical things. So I think everything is physical, and when we think of ideas as being abstract, it's just because, you know, like they're not physical objects yet in the same way that we see these kind of physical objects.
But they come to our mind in some weird way that doesn't seem like you
Got it?
Like if I dig a hole, I know I dug that hole.
Yeah.
Right? I know I stuck that shovel, I exerted effort, I put force, I lifted the dirt out, I made the hole. So if someone says, where'd that hole come from? I go, oh, I dug the hole.
Yeah.
Simple. But if someone says, where'd you get the idea for a joke? I'll go, oh, I don't know. It came to me one day. I was just laughing with my friends, and a thought popped in. It wasn't a calculated thing where I worked on it forever.
Fucking nice.
It's just it got entered into my mind out of nowhere, and then it came out my mouth, and everybody laughed, and I'm not sure where it came from. That's weird.
It is totally weird.
It's weird. Now imagine that someone figuring out an airplane, like some Wilbur and Orville writer.
People did, but you're right. It's also distributed over many human minds, so it's not like a single mind architecture. It's like the interaction of many minds and the physical world that generates these things. But I think,
Whatever the idea
I think it's time.
Kick left. Kick left.
Literally, yeah. So in assembly theory, we think time is fundamental, but you might think about time in terms of causation. And things like
you know, if I overpowered it, I could have got it there if I overpowered it.
Generate have a lot of time embedded in you, and time is actually the creative mechanism that's expanding the space of possibilities in the universe itself. But that's how I think about it. So you actually have an incredible amount of time in space. That's what you are as an evolved object. At least that's sort of my current thinking with this theory that we're developing and how we're trying to test the transition to life. And so where are those things coming from? They're coming from the fact that you are an architecture that's deep in time, and you have all of this internal space in you that's temporal in size, not spatial in size, that you can draw from to create.
And if you are reading people's work and interacting with people's research and you're learning things that people have discovered, you're essentially interacting with their time.
Yes. You're looking at all their traces of time, and you're doing it over time.
But he didn't curve it enough.
Your architecture and time, and all of that structure is still.
Oh,
and the more
fucking
time you
bitch.
spend on it, the more you'll absorb it.
Yeah.
You'll absorb more and more and more.
Yeah.
And the more people's thoughts and the more people's work you take in, you're taking all of their time.
Yes.
And you're putting it all into your head.
We're just like bundles. I think about time and information kind of being the same thing, but we're just all of that causation bundled up in like these small. We look small, but we're not small. So sometimes I have this visualization of Earth as like the largest thing in the universe that we know of, which is in terms of possibility space or how much time is embedded in the current structure of the Earth. So if you could do a zoom out of like the entire universe, and you could look at like space, assuming there's no aliens out there, and you look at Earth, like Earth is giant as far as like the amount of stuff that can be made here and how much history is embodied in every object. It's just this huge causal structure, and it's like, and I think we're representations of that physics, and that's one of the reasons that we have this perplexing feature of like these things seem abstract.
Somebody's closer.
They don't look like they're in physical space, like knock on wood on the table, but the table is like an object that has like 4 billion years of history in it. So it's like the physicality of
I'm
the
sorry,
things
Skeeter. Am I moving? I'm sorry, buddy, but my legs were hurting.
And that's true, I think, for us as living.
There you go. And go back to sleep.
And it also, if you could go to the original collision where Earth 1
Yeah.
and when Earth 1 creates the moon, and just imagine being
It's
able
so
to...
fabulous we have a giant moon.
So crazy.
Like, so crazy.
It's the only thing that keeps our atmosphere stable.
Yeah.
That's the only reason why we're here.
Yeah.
Like, in this form.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
Stable temperatures.
Such a chance event.
And it's so big.
Yeah.
It's 1/4 the size of us.
I know.
It's nuts.
And it looks nice on watches.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's floating in the sky, and it makes a summer night look incredible. Look at the moon.
I know. And we get eclipses.
Yeah.
So much of human history is dictated by the moon. It's amazing. Anyway, sorry.
It is. No, it's incredible. But that this whole thing, if you could watch it take place, I wonder if... I've often thought, like, there's so many mysteries of history, but I've almost wondered that if calculations get to a point, if computers get to a point where they could examine all of the objects in all the places that they are currently in the world and all the force that would cause them to exist and all the history that caused them to exist, you could accurately go back and see exactly what happened every step of the way.
Yeah. I think it might be possible. It's an interesting kind of thought experiment about like whether the universe is deterministic and fully predictable. And I think in the past, like one of the reasons that we think the laws of physics are deterministic is because in the past you can determine things, but I think the future is undetermined until it happens.
Probably.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it might be possible, but I don't know how much you can reconstruct because things die out, like extinction of entire lines of life, or like things disappear, like they don't exist anymore. And so I think that you can reconstruct the past, but I don't believe personally in an exact history for the universe.
Wow, that was a penalty for some bullshit.
And much greater than it used to be 300 or 400 years ago. If we could expand that knowledge for the next 1,000, 500,000 years ago, whatever it is from now into the future, to develop some sort of computation system, some sort of an ability to have an accurate assessment of everything that took place, and then be able to lay it out how it took place, because of all the objects and all the places and all the species that died off and all the records when they do core samples and they understand the iridium content, which meant asteroids impacted here, and carbon, which is some sort of a fire here, and it just calculated out where you can get some accurate...
In principle, it makes sense, but I think in practice, I'm not...
Cat, you way too much. I think you're cutting circulation off tonight.
Everything that the universe has done, you also have to, like, make sure that that physical thing actually can calculate itself and continue to exist in the future. So if you're, like, it's not... It's an interesting thought experiment about like how much of the universe can be computed, but you have to deal with resource bounds, and so like you have to deal with an actual physical.
Okay, Cat, I'm sorry, buddy.
It has to be able to persist long enough to and have enough energy to do it, which means there has to be things external to the computer. So you can't use all the resources available just to the computer.
I'm sorry, man. I know you want to lay on my lap, but you're getting to way too much. And you cut the circulation off. I'm so sorry. Yes, I'm so sorry.
Really precise resolution that you could reconstruct everything that has happened in the history of the universe. I think our universe forgets things, and I think it does so on purpose because that's part of not purpose, but like not in an anthropocentric way, but it does so because the act of forgetting things is actually in part how the universe generates novelty. If it remembered everything in the past and only those things persisted, like we live in an incredibly boring universe. We live in a universe that's constantly creating things, and sometimes it's like some of those things can't be generated anymore, but it makes more space for other things to be created.
You don't believe in infinity?
I don't.
Interesting.
I mean, as a mathematical construct, sure, but as a real physical thing, no. But I have a really different view of mathematics than most people. Like, I think mathematics is a physical system that exists on our planet, and I don't believe in, like, a Euclidean world that's, like, a perfect mathematical forms. I think they're a thing that our biosphere has invented, and one of the reasons that we think mathematics is universal is because it's a language that we understand that actually, is information that's embedded in pretty much every object in our environment. But it doesn't mean that it has universal reach.
Yeah, there's some problems with mathematics too, right? Eric Weinstein's
Yeah, I know Eric, yeah.
Number 2,
yeah.
There's a bunch of different things that bizarre with math, so it almost hints to an incomplete understanding of mathematics, even as we currently.
Right. Well, there's always that. I mean, it always perplexes me that people accepted Euclidean geometry as the only form of geometry for like 2,000 years. I mean, like literally, like that was it. And then we were like, oh, well, there could be non-Euclidean geometries, and we just never imagined them because like they don't reflect our physical environment. I mean, that's crazy. So that's saying that there's mathematics we don't understand. But then there's a question about whether there's a deeper structure that's not even mathematical that math might be derived from. Like, is there a language deeper than math?
What could that be?
Don't know. I mean, I think that
about it?
I have. I think about it a lot.
I'm sure you do.
Well, I mean,
kind of rhetorical question.
yeah, no, it's okay. Well, I worry about this a lot with like the nature of the relationship between the theory of computation and assembly theory, for example. So computation is, a way that we kind of understand the formalization of mathematical things that we actually can, algorithmically do, right? So anything that you can calculate, you can compute. And so there are obviously like uncomputable numbers and things like that, but they live in some abstract, But anyway, so assembly theory has some features that look like theories of complexity and computation, in that, like people talk about a minimal complexity for a computer program is the way that you talk about complexity, and we talk about a minimal causal history to construct an object. But I think what assembly theory is a bit different and super interesting is it's it's actually hard to compute the assembly index. It's harder than classes of computational algorithms that are kind of similar to it. But the universe generates these molecules that are computationally incredibly complex, but causally the universe is complex. And so, like, you couldn't compute necessarily, like, on a supercomputer, like, the complexity
I knew I should have
of a
fucking
cell.
put a little bit more juice
Like
on
you're
it.
saying, like, could I reconstruct the whole history? Yes, the universe can generate that structure. So it suggests to me that there's something else going on, and the space is actually a lot larger than what you can computationally do.
So what else could be going on?
I think that the best language I have for it right now, and I really don't know. Like I'm really struggling with this in my work right now. And Lee and I are going back and forth about these things all the time. But is causation, and also that the other part about like why the universe is maybe not computable is this mechanism of novelty generation. Like there are some if the universe genuinely creates novelty that can't be predicted on prior history, and like the future really is not determined, that's suggesting something fundamentally different than the way that we understand the world works right now. And I don't know what it is, but I think it has to do with something with causation and something about the physicality of objects. Like objects really do exist; they really do encode their histories, and those histories are interacting all the time, which is making everything much more complicated. Like that idea of these time threads interacting that you were talking about.
And then there's the fundamental question of why.
Yes. I think, I mean, when I think about, like, what life is, like, why does life exist, I think the universe is trying to maximize the number of things that exist.
Yeah, we have to tie or win this one.
And, like, the universe is the constructor for things to get to exist. Like, it's building, all of existence is, like, what physically exists in the universe. Wouldn't it be great if, like, there was a principle of nature where it was just trying to pack as much existence in as possible?
Well, it makes sense also if physical things, these human beings create, and life creates physical things.
Yes.
That would be the best way to maximize it, because this
which is also why I think we have free will. Because if we act independently, we're actually more creative than if we didn't.
Do you ever butt heads with determinism?
I butt heads with everyone. Nothing wrong with that.
No, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, no, I fundamentally love disagreeing with smart people. And so I think, and I try to surround myself with colleagues that share that mentality. So I think, and I think being around people that challenge you is so critical. And like, you disagree with them on fundamental things. Like, that's okay. Like, I have, like, some of my closest friends boil my blood on some things, but you have to respect that they're thinking smart people, and like, so,
I always put myself in there,
yeah.
I think we have a huge problem as human beings. We attach ideas to ourselves, and so we defend these ideas as if we're defending our very
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
I think we do have a tendency to do that.
I've developed that through having so many conversations with people that I don't see eye to eye with on the podcast, but instead of arguing with them, I try to ask them how they think, why they
Yes.
what is it, challenge a little bit just to try to get a response out of them,
Yeah.
try to figure out, like, what is your process and why is it so different than
Well,
mine?
that's good for you too, because you grow more and you understand more by doing that.
Doing this thing over the last 15 years has been the most radical, unexpected education I could have ever had.
That's amazing.
I'm a different human.
Yeah.
Like, completely different human than I was 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think that is something that's really hard, is like if you close yourself to ideas that you don't agree with, you're closing off like yourself to potential to grow.
Yes.
And understand the world better. And I think
Unquestionably.
Yeah.
Unquestionably. And these ideas, the problem when we start defending them is like, then we stop looking at them. We start like we put them as like a protected thing that we're trying to argue against, and we're trying to, instead of invite criticism and some sort of an analysis of our thought process, we're trying to defend it.
No, so I'm happy, like professionally, also to change my mind all the time. So like I was a determinist. I'm not a determinist.
Promotion, part 3.
I think that probably changed in the last few years.
Damn.
And it's mostly because of the structure of what I understand of like what we're doing with assembly.
But so are we.
Assembly theory is like still very much in development.
Yeah.
We're still really trying to work on the ideas.
Alright, you getting off?
Ideas about the origin of life having something to do with
I'll talk to you.